Greetings, everyone. I hope you've had another highly productive and successful week because it's important to be productive and successful, for that self actualization feeling. And I hope you're warm. But what I don't hope is, if you're in Europe, that it's warm outside. Do you know why? Because it's winter. And I'm happy to report that winter is moving across Europe and getting closer and closer to where I am in the southern part of Europe. So it will be a bit late. But here's what uh, I mean. Uh, I don't want you to freeze if you're in Europe. I don't want anyone to freeze or feel cold. But I like winter. I don't like the cold. I like winter because of winter holidays. We can't have them in another season. I mean, Australians can. I mean, they celebrate Christmas on the beach. But in our part of the world, the cold goes with holidays, and the holidays go with the cold. Always a silver lining and all this. But that was just to try to instill some pre-holiday mood because, as you can probably see, I'm already in a pre-holiday mood and getting ready to bake some cookies, some Christmas cookies. But unless you want me to share the recipe, which I can do in the comments, today I'm not here to talk about Christmas cookies, but about electric cars. Now, you may or may not have heard the news that broke this week that the Swiss authorities are planning to effectively ban EV drivers from using their cars unless absolutely necessary. Now, the Substack post where I read this was in English, but it had linked the piece of legislation. I cannot verify its authenticity because I don't speak German. But if the author of this article has linked a document, then I suppose he or she knows what's in this document. It could be easily verified. So, Switzerland, to repeat, Switzerland is planning to ban drivers from using their electric cars unless absolutely necessary. Why? Because they expect a shortage of electricity. Why? Because Switzerland, like other European countries, has been quite unfortunate this year with lower than normal hydropower output, which means for Switzerland a greater dependency on electricity imports from France and Germany, and that's doubly unfortunate because, as we know, France is currently repairing a lot of its nuclear reactors, which supply more than two-thirds of its electricity and make it one of the largest electricity exporters in Europe. And Germany, well, we know how tough things are of Germany right now. They are actually so tough that the head of their energy regulator said that all it would take for a crisis to really strike would be several days of freezing temperatures. And guess what happens in winter? We get freezing temperatures on a daily basis, not just a few days. We get them for weeks. Now, why target EVs? Because they use electricity to go. But hilariously, someone on Twitter, a very clever person and a very evil person, I'd say, when I posted this piece of news, he asked, wait, what happened to the idea of plugging EVs into the grid to supply electricity back to the grid? And I would say it was a funny comment, but it was also an evil comment, and it was an unfair comment because the plans for having EVs plugged into the grid to supply electricity in times of shortage was actually designed and conceived for times when everybody will be driving EVs. There will be millions of EVs in cities, and you could plug a large number of them into the grid to supply with electricity. I know it sounds ridiculous. I know this. As I say it, I realize it sounds ridiculous. But when I first read about this idea, it actually made a lot of sense. I mean, what could be simpler? First, you take electricity from the grid to charge all your EVs, drive them around, and when solar power output or wind power output is lower because it's evening, for example, you plug your EV. Into the socket to return some electricity. Of course, this raises the question: what happens after the battery empties, the EV battery empties into the grid? Wouldn't you then need to suck back that electricity from the grid in order to charge the car, in order to be able to use it? But oddly enough, nobody was asking these questions when this idea about EVs connected to the grid first began to make the headlines. And of course, nobody thought about any shortages of electricity for whatever reasons, because wind and solar are getting cheaper and cheaper, and they're renewable, so we have no problem. But apparently, as reality is showing us these days, we do have a problem. So basically, what Switzerland is doing right now may be a harbinger of things to come in other countries. Like France didn't let drivers fill up their tanks unless they were really, really empty, because there were refinery workers striking across the country. Now we're seeing the same thing, but with electricity. And the problem is, as we know, EVs are not yet quite as popular as their proponents and their champions would like them to be. And anything like that, like what the Swiss authorities are doing, is going to compromise their popularity further, because the Swiss will say, okay, I won't drive my EV, but I'll drive my petrol-powered SUV or diesel-powered, God forbid. So yeah, what we're seeing is even more emissions for emission ambitious Europe. And I don't know about you, but with such news, I really can't wait for every new week and what it will bring us. And just to give you a taste of something else I saw last week, but I'll probably think of doing something about it for next Sunday. Is the latest from the UN Secretary General, who said that plastics are a threat to human rights. I will leave you with that thought to ponder on, because Sunday is a good day for pondering on big thoughts. See you next week.